The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Throne was a place of cold beauty and older power. Crystal pillars reached toward ceilings that stretched beyond sight, and the walls glowed with light that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. 300 council members sat in perfect rows, their forms ranging from humanoid to shapes that easy description. Some had skin like flowing water. Others were solid as stone. A few were nothing but consciousness held in a form of pure energy. Council member N of the called the session to order. Her crystalline body caught the light and scattered it in 1,000 colors. She had sat in this chamber for 8,000 years. In that time, she had seen empires rise and fall like waves on an ocean. She had watched younger species crawl out of their birth worlds and learn the rules of the galaxy. Few things surprised her anymore. The first matter on the agenda was routine. Reports came in from the outer colonies about mining operations, territorial disputes, and resource allocation. The Council heard these reports with the same bored attention they gave to all administrative matters. The throne had ruled the galaxy for so long that nothing seemed urgent. Everything moved according to the patterns established across. Then the military advisor stepped forward. His name was Captain, and he commanded a small portion of the throne's vast military forces. When he spoke, his voice carried weight. The council members turned their attention toward him. "There is a problem," he said. "A human colony on the outer rim has refused to comply with our latest directive. They are mining materials near a neutron star in a forbidden zone. They were told to stop. They did not stop." The hall filled with noise. Some council members seemed amused. Others made sounds that could have been laughter. The humans were a young species, discovered only 200 years ago when they first built a basic jump drive. They were so new to galactic society that most council members still barely acknowledged their existence. One of the oldest members, a named and who could speak directly into the minds of others, projected his thoughts across the chamber. "The humans do not understand our ways. They are children playing with dangerous things. Let them keep their mining operation. They will learn obedience soon enough. We do not need to intervene in every small rebellion." But a younger counselor named stood up. Her crystalline form was smaller than N's, but her mind was sharp and her voice was clear. "We have ignored humanity's progression because we thought them too primitive to matter. Yet they have built ships faster than we expected. They have developed technologies we did not give them. They refuse orders without fear of consequences. This suggests they are more capable than we assumed." A warrior, one of the council's military members, let out a deep laugh. "Capable. The humans are insects. They live for 80 years. We have fought wars that lasted longer than their entire civilization exists. One mining colony breaks our rules, and we respond with the threshold. One destroyer will be more than enough to remind them why they should fear the throne." The council voted quickly. The decision was easy because no one believed it mattered much. They would send the threshold, a destroyer-class warship, to the human colony. The ship would display its weapons, give the humans a chance to surrender, and if they refused, the colony would be destroyed. It was a lesson. The humans would learn that the throne could not be challenged. Captain Han of the was chosen to command the threshold. He was old by human standards but young by measures. He had fought in 40 wars and lost none. His record was perfect. His confidence was absolute. When he received his orders, he accepted them with the certainty of a being who had never truly been defeated. The threshold left the main fleet within the hour. It traveled through the galaxy using jump points that humans had not yet discovered. The journey that would take a human ship 3 months took Han's destroyer only 3 days. The Council barely thought about the mission after the threshold left. To them, it was already finished. The outcome was certain. Far from the chamber of the Council, on a small human colony called New Haven, Commander Hayes received a message that made everything change. The message came through emergency channels. It was official, direct, and impossible to ignore. The Galactic Throne was ordering the human mining operation to stop immediately. All unauthorized equipment must be shut down. All workers must stand down. The message gave the colony only 2 days to comply. If they refused, destruction would follow. Read the message 3 times. He was not a young man. His hair had turned white from stress and too many years making impossible choices. He had built this colony from nothing. He had watched it grow and become something real. He had friends here, family. His brother Robert was the chief scientist. His daughter lived in the Western settlement. Made a decision. He would not comply, not this time. He activated a communication channel that few people knew existed. The signal was encrypted and shielded. It went out to a location far from the colony, hidden in the depths of a nearby nebula. The message was brief and clear. The time has come. Activate the project. In the darkness between stars, inside a cloud of gas and dust that hid it from all normal sensors, a warship began to wake up. The ship was called the Horizon's Guard. It had been built in secret across 20 years. Every piece of technology had been salvaged or stolen from disabled alien vessels. Every system had been reverse-engineered by human engineers working in darkness and silence. The Horizon's Guard was humanity's secret weapon. It was the response to centuries of the throne's arrogance and control. It was the moment everything would change. On the bridge of the threshold, Captain Han reviewed the human colony one final time before giving the order to open fire. He studied their defenses and found them laughable. He checked their weapons and saw nothing that could threaten his ship. The humans had no military capability worth mentioning. This would be simple. Han had no idea that his destroyer was already being watched. He did not know that somewhere in the darkness, the Horizon's Guard was charging its weapons and preparing for battle. He did not know that the age of the throne's unopposed dominance was about to end. He gave the order to broadcast the ultimatum: surrender or be destroyed. There was no third option. There was no escape. But there was something he did not know. There was always something he did not know. The Horizon's Guard rose from the nebula like a ghost taking form. The ship was not as large as the threshold, but it had been built with precision and purpose. Every system was designed to work together. Every weapon had been tested 1,000 times. The crew that manned this warship had trained for years in preparation for this exact moment. Captain Foster stood on the bridge and watched the final systems come online. She was a tall woman with ice-blue eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. Her hair was pulled back tight, and there was not a single thing about her appearance that was soft or uncertain. She had been a soldier since she was 18 years old. She had fought battles that took thousands of lives. She had made decisions that would haunt her for the rest of her existence. Now she would make the biggest decision of all. The navigation officer confirmed that all systems were ready. His fingers moved across the controls with the grace of someone who had practiced the same movements 10,000 times. He could read the space around them the way other people read words on a page. He could sense the gravity wells and the current of the stellar wind. His body knew where the Horizon's Guard needed to go. Grace Murphy, the weapons officer, reported that all gun systems were charged and ready. She had been an engineer before she became a weapons expert. She knew every circuit in the targeting system. She knew how each weapon would perform under different conditions. She had modified the alien weapons technology until they worked better than they had in the hands of their original creators. Now those weapons were ready to change the course of history. There was a moment of quiet before they moved. Foster looked at her crew and saw the fear in some of their eyes and the determination in others. None of them had any illusions about what they were about to do. They were about to attack a warship built by a civilization that had fought wars for thousands of years. The threshold was more advanced and more powerful. By any reasonable measure, the humans should lose. But Captain Foster knew something that Han did not know. She had studied the enemy. She had read every piece of intelligence that human scouts could gather about tactics and weapons systems. She had found patterns. She had found weaknesses. She had found the places where the older aliens' confidence created blind spots. The humans had another advantage that could not be measured on a chart. They had adapted themselves to survive on a world that tried to kill them every moment of every day. Earth was a harsh place where humans had evolved the ability to think creatively and adapt quickly. They had learned to survive through intelligence and cooperation rather than overwhelming force. That instinct was in their blood. Foster activated the ship-wide communication system. Her voice came to every person working to run the Horizon's guard. "This is the captain. In moments we will engage the enemy. I will not lie to you and tell you that this is going to be simple. The Threshold is a powerful warship crewed by experienced soldiers. They will fight hard and they will fight with skill. But we have one thing they do not have. We have every single reason to win. They are here because they were ordered to be here. We are here because our families are at stake. We are here because our future depends on this moment. They will fight for duty. We will fight for survival. That difference matters." Down on the colony, Commander made the hardest decision of all. He ordered the evacuation of every non-military person into the deep shelters built beneath the settlement. The shelters were carved into the bedrock of the planet. They could withstand orbital bombardment. They were not comfortable, but they were safe. Dr. Robert Hayes' brother worked frantically to move the research data into secure storage. The work his team had done over the past years was stored on devices and in databases. That information represented the future of humanity's knowledge. If the colony fell, that knowledge had to survive. Robert moved from terminal to terminal, checking that every piece of data was backed up and protected. His hands shook slightly, but his mind remained sharp. The children went into the shelters first, watched them as they filed down the corridors trying to look brave even though they were terrified. His daughter, Sarah, walked past him without meeting his eyes. She was 16 years old. She was old enough to understand what was about to happen. She was old enough to be afraid. Put his hand on her shoulder for just a moment. They did not speak. There was nothing to say. He turned her toward the shelter entrance and watched her disappear into the darkness below. The evacuation took 3 hours. When it was finished, only the military personnel and essential staff remained above ground. They moved to their positions and prepared for battle. Some were soldiers with actual weapons training. Others were colonists who had taken up arms because they had no choice. All of them understood that they were about to participate in something that had never been attempted before. Humans were about to fight back against the galactic throne. On the Horizon's guard plotted the interception course. The Threshold was approaching the colony at a steady speed, confident and unconcerned. Calculated the exact moment when they would need to and the exact vector that would give them the best tactical advantage. Captain Foster reviewed the battle plan one final time. The ship would come out of cloak directly above the Threshold. The first shots would be aimed at the destroyer's shield generators. Once the shields were down, they would target the communications array. A warship blinded and unable to call for help was a warship that could not coordinate its defense properly. After that, it would be a matter of speed and precision. The Horizon's guard had been built to be faster and more agile than any ship of its size. Grace Murphy had trained her weapons crew to be accurate under conditions of extreme stress. Together, if everything went perfectly, they might be able to disable the Threshold without destroying it. Han was not a stupid man. He was a confident man, but not stupid. There was a difference. He would adjust to unexpected situations. He would respond to new threats with tactical skill honed across decades of warfare. The outcome was not certain. It only appeared to be certain when you believed that the enemy you faced was incapable of offering real resistance. Foster gave the final order, and engage. Let's show them what humanity can do. The space where there had been nothing suddenly contained a warship. The emptiness became presence. The invisible became visible. On the Threshold's bridge, alarms began to scream. Captain Hand's first reaction was disbelief. A warship did not simply appear in space. Warships moved through space. They approached and were detected on sensors. This one had simply materialized as if it had been waiting in the space between moments for the exact right second to become real. Han's mind worked through the tactical implications in the fraction of a second that his training gave him. A cloaking warship meant advanced technology. Advanced technology meant a threat that should have been identified years ago. The humans were not supposed to have access to cloaking systems. The humans were not supposed to have access to much of anything. "Return fire," Han shouted the order across the bridge. "Full defensive posture." The Threshold's weapon systems came alive. Energy bolts shot out toward the Horizon's guard, but the human ship was already moving, had anticipated the response. The Threshold would fire from its current position, following ballistic calculations and old patterns of behavior that military doctrine had used for centuries. Push the Horizon's guard sideways through space using lateral thrusters in a pattern that no ship would ever perform. The human ship twisted through trajectories that seemed to defy physics itself. The Threshold's first volley of fire missed entirely. The shots passed through the space where the Horizon's guard had been a moment before. The captain felt a cold sensation move through his body. This was not how his battles went. His battles were predictable. They followed the rules that warfare had established long ago. This battle followed different rules. Grace Murphy targeted the Threshold's shield generators with the precision of someone who had studied them through every piece of intelligence available. The Horizon's guard's weapons opened fire. The first volley was not designed to break through shields directly. Instead, it was designed to find the exact points where the shield frequency wavered and the shield projectors were located. 3 direct hits struck the Threshold's starboard shields. The shield generators were not destroyed, but they were damaged. Their efficiency dropped from 100% to 73% in a single moment. The human attack had reduced the destroyer's defensive capability by more than a quarter with a single coordinated strike. Han understood what was happening now. The humans were not trying to outpower the Threshold. They were trying to systematically break it apart piece by piece. They had planned this battle. They had studied the Threshold and everything that made it work. They were executing a strategy that had been designed specifically to counter his vessel's strengths and exploit its weaknesses. Adjust fire, target their weapon systems. Now. Han's voice cracked with something that could have been anger or could have been the first real fear he had felt in decades. The Threshold's guns swiveled and fired at the Horizon's guard. This time, several shots came dangerously close. One energy bolt burned through the human ship's port side shielding, and alarms started to sound on the bridge. The impact threw several crew members to the floor. The shields held, but barely. The Horizon's guard was not invincible. It was still just a ship built by a young species using alien technology they did not fully understand. But Captain Foster remained calm. "Bring us around to their aft section. Grace, I want everything we have on their engine cluster. Hit them hard and hit them now." The Horizon's guard executed a maneuver that would have torn a ship apart. The human vessel came about in a turn so tight and so fast that the structure groaned under the stress. But it held. The design specifications had been built with human physiology in mind. Humans could withstand higher G-forces in the new inertial dampening systems because humans were tougher than anyone expected. The Threshold's engines suddenly became the focus of every weapon on the Horizon's guard. Energy beams converged on the destroyer's rear section. Explosions bloomed as the human weapons found their targets. The Threshold's main engines, designed to push a massive warship through space, suddenly became liabilities. One of the 3 main engines exploded in a cascade of destruction. The other 2 were damaged heavily. The Threshold's speed dropped from combat velocity to almost nothing. A warship that could not move was a warship that could not fight effectively. Han knew this. Every captain in the galaxy knew this. The Horizon's guard had just crippled his destroyer. He ordered evasive maneuvers, but there was nowhere to evade to. The human ship was too fast. It positioned itself above the disabled threshold and held position like a predator standing over prey that could not run. Captain Foster's voice came across the communication channels directed at the threshold. Every word was clear and final. "This is Captain Foster of the Horizon's Guard. Your weapons are offline. Your shields are failing. Your engines are destroyed. Your warship is no longer a threat. You have two choices. You can surrender and we will preserve your ship and your crew, or you can continue fighting and I will destroy you completely. The choice is yours." Han looked around the bridge of the threshold. His crew was still fighting, but they were fighting a battle that was already lost. He could see it in their eyes. They could see it too. The confidence that had carried them through so many battles had evaporated in moments. This was not supposed to happen. They did not lose battles to species less than 1,000 years old. But looking at the human warship positioned above him, looking at the weapons that could destroy the threshold with a single volley, Han understood that all his training and all his experience meant nothing against an enemy that had taken years to prepare for exactly this encounter. "Stand down, weapons," he said, and his voice sounded foreign to his own ears. "Lower all shields. Raise the surrender beacon." The threshold went quiet. The destroyer that had left the galactic throne so confident, so certain of its victory, was now a disabled warship in the control of humans who had just proven that everything the Council believed about their place in the galaxy was wrong. On the Horizon's Guard, Captain Foster received the surrender notification. She should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt the weight of what was about to happen. The message would reach the galactic throne. The message would tell them that their destroyer had been defeated. The message would tell them that humanity was not the harmless young species they had assumed. The age of the throne's unopposed control had ended in the space above a small human colony, and everything that was about to follow would be far more complicated than any battle. The message reached the galactic throne in hours. The council had remained in session, waiting for the confirmation that the human colony had been destroyed. Instead, they received a message that the threshold had been defeated and its captain and crew captured. The news spread through the chamber like a virus. Members who had been sitting in composed silence suddenly began to voice their confusion and shock. The emergency session began immediately. Council Member N called for order, but the hall was filled with noise and argument. This was unprecedented. A destroyer-class warship of the Galactic Throne, crewed by warriors and commanded by an officer with an unblemished record, had been taken down by humans. The young counselor who had warned against underestimating humanity stood to address the chamber. Her crystalline body caught the light as she moved, and she waited until the noise died down before she spoke. "I told this council that we were making a mistake," she said simply. "I told you that humanity was developing faster than we expected. I told you that they had been gathering technology that we did not give them. You did not listen. You sent a single destroyer against a species you thought was beneath your notice, and now that destroyer is gone." A member, one of the telepathic beings who preferred to communicate through direct mind-to-mind contact, projected their thoughts across the chamber. "This is a temporary setback. Our military forces are vast. One warship is nothing. We can send a fleet large enough to glass their entire planet. We can make an example that will be remembered across the galaxy." But another voice, that of an old being who had survived longer than any other member of the council, spoke with quiet authority. "We could destroy them, but if we do, we declare ourselves to all the younger species. We become the evil empire that crushes potential rivals rather than integrating them into our structure. We prove that the only way to survive in the galaxy is to hide from us or to attack us before we can attack them. Is that the lesson we wish to teach?" The military faction pushed back hard. They demanded immediate action. They called for the mobilization of war fleets and the complete destruction of the human colony. But the arguments began to shift when a message came through from the threshold itself. Captain Han had recorded a detailed report while imprisoned aboard the human vessel. He described the tactical approach the humans had used. He detailed the technology of the Horizon's Guard. Most importantly, he provided his honest assessment of the threat that humanity represented. The humans are not a species that can be crushed through overwhelming force alone, Han said in the recording. They think differently than we do. They adapt to circumstances faster than any civilization I have encountered. They prepare meticulously. They sacrifice everything they have for survival. I underestimated them, and it cost me my warship. I recommend treating them as a serious strategic concern, not a minor annoyance to be eliminated. The council fell silent. Han's words carried weight. He had given his honest assessment, even though that assessment meant admitting his own failure. The military wanted war, but even they had to consider the possibility that Han was correct. Seize the moment. Humanity has shown strength, but they have also shown mercy. They disabled our warship without destroying it. They captured our crew without executing them. They have shown that they are capable of combat at a level we did not expect, but they have also shown restraint. This is the behavior of a civilization that deserves to be engaged with directly, not destroyed indiscriminately. The debate continued for many hours. Finally, a compromise position began to take shape. The Council would send a diplomatic mission to the human colony. They would offer humanity a recognition of their status as an emerging power. They would offer trade agreements and a position in the Council structure. In exchange, humanity would agree to limit their military expansion and commit to peaceful coexistence. It was not what the military faction wanted, but it was what the majority of the Council could accept. The alternative, a full military assault that might trigger wider rebellion among subjugated species, was too dangerous to pursue without being absolutely certain of victory. And Han's warning had created doubt about that certainty. Down on the colony, Commander received communications from several smaller species that the humans had only minimal contact with previously. They had heard about the battle. They had heard that humanity had defeated a council warship. They were requesting meetings, asking about the possibility of alliances, wondering if humans might be interested in challenging the throne's dominance together. Pass the information to Captain Foster. The implications were vast. One battle had changed the political landscape of the entire galaxy. The species that the Council had kept subservient for centuries were suddenly wondering if the throne could actually be challenged. They were looking at humanity, at the Horizon's Guard, and seeing something they had never seen before. They were seeing a potential alternative to Council rule. Dr. Robert Hayes worked with his team to analyze the data they had gathered from the battle. The Horizon's Guard had taken damage, but the damage was repairable. More importantly, the data from the battle would allow them to improve the ship's design. They could build another vessel like the Horizon's Guard, or several vessels. They could improve the weapon systems. They could develop new technologies based on what they had learned. Robert sat in his office and realized something that made his breath catch. Humanity had not just won a battle. Humanity had proven that they could learn alien technology and improve upon it. They had proven that they could innovate and adapt. In a few more years, if they were given time to develop and improve, humans could become a major military power in the galaxy. The Galactic Throne realized this too. That realization was what drove the Council to choose diplomacy over war. They had a narrow window to integrate humanity into the galactic structure before humans became too powerful to control through any means other than mutual agreement. A diplomatic delegation was assembled, volunteered to lead it. She would travel to the human colony with offers of alliance and trade. She would attempt to negotiate a peace that would satisfy both sides and reshape the fundamental structure of galactic politics. As prepared for the journey, she thought about how close the galaxy had come to catastrophe. If the humans had been slightly less prepared or slightly less skilled, the threshold would have destroyed the colony. If the threshold had succeeded, the humans would have been crushed, and the throne's dominance would have continued unchallenged for another 1,000 years. But Han had underestimated his enemy, and that underestimation had changed the course of history. The age of absolute council dominance was ending. The age of shared galactic power was beginning. And it all came down to one moment when a human warship in the space above a dying colony and decided that it would fight for survival no matter what the cost. The diplomatic negotiations began on neutral ground, in a space station that had been owned by no single power for more than 1,000 years. Arrived with her team of counselors and advisors. Captain Foster arrived with a small group of human military personnel and diplomatic representatives. The meeting was tense and formal, but it was happening. Two species that had been in conflict mere hours before were now sitting down to talk about peace. Open the discussion with an offer. The Galactic Throne would recognize human sovereignty over their colony and all human-controlled territories. In exchange, humans would accept a position in the Council as a full voting member. This position would grant humanity representation in all major decisions affecting the galaxy. It would grant them access to trade networks and shared resources. It would grant them the same protections that other major powers received. Captain Foster listened carefully to everything proposed. The offer was generous by galactic standards, but Foster understood that it came from a place of fear rather than genuine respect. The throne was offering humanity a position of power because the throne was afraid of what would happen if they refused. "Your offer is acceptable in principle," Foster said, "but we have modifications that we must make for this agreement to work." She outlined the human position. The council seat would give humans full voting rights, not just advisory status. Trade agreements would be equitable, not structured to benefit established powers. Most importantly, humans reserved the right to develop their military technology and manufacturing without council interference or limitations. The throne could not dictate what weapons humans could build or what ships they could create. Crystalline form seemed to dim slightly. This was the part that the council would resist. They wanted humanity integrated, but they wanted humanity controlled. They wanted to be able to limit human power before it grew too great. What Foster was asking for was the right to become a major military power without any restriction from the throne. "That will be difficult to negotiate," said honestly. "The Council fears unbridled military expansion. They fear another species becoming too powerful to manage." "Then let them fear," Foster replied. "We have just proven that we can make them afraid. We have proven that we can take their best warship and disable it. We have proven that we are not a species to be underestimated or controlled. If they want peace with us, they must accept us as equals. Not eventually, not after some trial period. Now." The negotiations continued for 3 days. There were moments when they seemed to break down completely. There were moments when thought that Foster would walk out and the Threshold would use its captive crew to launch a counterattack. But Foster never walked out. She remained calm and firm. She wanted peace, but she would not accept subjugation disguised as partnership. Finally, a compromise was reached. Humans would receive a full council seat with all associated voting rights. Trade agreements would be negotiated on a case-by-case basis to ensure fairness. The council would not attempt to restrict human military development, but humans would agree not to engage in aggressive conquest or military expansion against other peaceful species. It was not perfect, but it was the beginning of a new era. The documents were signed. Humans became a major power in the galactic community not through centuries of gradual advancement, but through a single act of military courage and tactical skill. Back on the colony, and Robert stood together on the observation deck, watching the stars. The younger colonists had been brought back up from the deep shelters. The evacuation was over. The threat had passed, but everything had changed. "Do you think they will keep their word?" Robert asked. "Do you think the Council will actually treat us as equals?" "For now," said, "as long as we remain strong, as long as we continue to develop our capabilities, as long as we never give them an opportunity to believe that they can defeat us again. The throne respects strength. We have shown them strength. We must never show them weakness." Robert nodded. He understood. Humanity had earned a place at the table of galactic powers, but they had earned it through blood and sacrifice. They would have to maintain their position through constant vigilance and continued development. There would be no rest, no period of stability where they could relax. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and humanity was still very young. Dr. Hayes turned to his brother. "I am recording a message to send to Earth. The people there need to know what happened here. They need to know that humanity is no longer confined to a single planet. We are players in galactic politics. We are builders of great warships. We are a force that the oldest civilizations in the galaxy must respect." Smiled. It was a rare expression on his weathered face. "Send the message. Let them know. Let them understand that we are no longer alone and no longer subject to the whims of older powers. We have claimed our place in the stars." On the bridge of the Horizon's Guard, Captain Foster stood and looked out at the expanse of space before her. The battle was over. The diplomatic negotiations were complete, but her work was far from finished. She had won a battle and helped secure a peace, but she understood that this was just the beginning. New warships would need to be built. The technology of the Horizon's Guard would need to be improved and expanded. The crew that had fought on this bridge would become the foundation of a new human military. They would train new pilots and new officers. They would establish the protocols and practices that would make humans respected as warriors throughout the galaxy. Foster thought about all the challenges that still lay ahead. But when she looked at the empty seat on the council that would soon be filled by a human representative, she felt something that could only be described as hope. Humanity had proven itself capable of more than anyone had expected. The greatest era of human achievement in the galaxy was only beginning. The Horizon's Guard, still bearing the scars of battle, remained positioned near the colony. It was no longer a secret weapon hidden in the shadows. It was now the flagship of a growing human presence in the galaxy. Other species had already begun to request meetings with the ship's captain. Some wanted military advice. Others wanted to form trade alliances. A few were attempting to determine if humanity might be interested in joining coalitions against council rule. Humanity stood at a crossroads. They could choose to become tyrants like the throne had been, using their newfound power to dominate other species. Or they could choose to become something different. They could choose to use their strength to reshape the galaxy into a place where younger species were not crushed beneath the weight of older powers. Foster, standing on the bridge of her warship, made a silent promise to herself. She would not let humanity forget where they came from. She would not let them become arrogant. She would not let them repeat the mistakes that the Council had made. She would build a military that could protect humanity, and she would build a human culture that would remember that strength meant nothing if it was not paired with wisdom and justice. The stars stretched out before her, infinite and full of possibility. The galaxy had just learned that it had underestimated humanity. Now it would learn what humans could truly become when given the chance to grow and develop as equals among the powers of the cosmos. The age of the throne's undisputed dominance had ended. The age of humanity's emergence had begun, and everything that would follow would be shaped by the choices that humanity made in these next crucial years.